Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, I am so excited because one of my very favorite people is on the podcast with me today. And you are getting 2 operational experts, and today's going to be kind of fun. So if you remember the Krista and Annie show, which we have done many a time on this podcast, today is going to be the Krista and Gwen show. And you're going to get the kind of fly on the wall view of 2 operational experts who works really closely with very highly successful entrepreneurial women, getting to share some of the things that we see. And I want you to pay really close attention and listen, because these are things that maybe, just maybe, are things you want to look at in your business, or they may be things that you are shaking your head while we're talking because you see in your clients' businesses all of the time. So, Gwen, I'm so excited that you are here today. Welcome to the podcast.
I am so excited to be on the podcast with you, Krista, because as you said, you and I can pretty much talk about this stuff probably for days and days and days if we were given the opportunity. I love chatting with you about all of these kinds of things that I know that we're going to dive into. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about Miss Gwen, and then we are going to get to all the good stuff. So Gwen Bortner is the founder of Everyday Effectiveness, where she helps visionary female entrepreneurs achieve their most ambitious goals without the stress and overwhelm of trying to do it all on their own. Her mission is to help women take back their time and succeed on their own terms. And like me, she's been doing this a really long time. So we both have 3 decades under our belt. So we know, a thing or two about growing and scaling businesses. And we also know a thing or two about some of the blind spots and some of the challenges in some of the things that really incredible visionary based founders can sometimes overlook, that actually causes them to stay stuck or to slow down the results that they're really looking for without quite realizing it. And so that's what we want to talk a little bit about today, so we can help you break through some of those areas. So Gwen, I'm going to turn it over to you first to share what are some of those things that you see quite often.
So, well, it's one of those things that the list is long, right? Because every situation, one of our big fundamental values for our business is context matters. And so every person is a little bit different that we see. And to me, that's part of it, is that there's not a one size fits all answer. The things that I do see a lot that happen on the operation side is first making the assumption that because the business exists and is running, is that it's running the way that it has to run, which is almost never quite right, and it's almost never true. There's usually a lot of options, but unless you're an operations person like you and I are, Krista, it's like, well, this is the way that it works, so this must be the way that it has to work. And it's like, no, there's actually other ways that this could be done. And sometimes they're better and sometimes they're not. I mean, that's also the assumption is, well, then you must know a better way. Sometimes this way is the best way, the way you're doing it, but not always, right? And understanding all those nuances of how do those pieces fit together. And one of the phrases I came up with a number of years ago, and I use a lot, is every business works exactly as it was designed, but very few businesses are designed with intention. And that's another thing that I see a lot in, entrepreneurial businesses, is the operations is designed as a reaction, right? Something happened and now we have to solve the problem. We solve the problem. Now that's the way that we do this thing. whatever it is, which is the right way at the beginning. At the beginning, there's a lot of intention put toward marketing and sales and the product itself and the development of the product, whether it's a service or a physical product or whatever it is. Makes perfect sense at the beginning, and most of the rest of the stuff really is reactionary. But at some point, those reactionary answers aren't necessarily the best answers, right? And to me, that's when you and I need to come in and start working with folks to help them think about it differently.
And I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense. In the beginning, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get this brilliant, amazing idea and vision that you have and bring it to life. And you're trying to get something launched. And it's a very passion fueled, very market focused point in the business. You're not really thinking about operations other than those necessary things that you kind of have to do to have a business and to be able to get things launched. And then operations, as you said, reactionary, right? All of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, I just sold this thing. I have to actually deliver it. How am I going to deliver it? Oh, wait, I have this idea and I want to launch this product. What platform am I going to put it on? And so you do end up making some of those early decisions in that reactionary way. And it's fine, right? We all start that way. Even as an operations person, I have started businesses that way, right? I mean,
I did
it's
the
just
same
what you
thing. I
do.
mean, you would think that we would think about it a lot more, and we probably do think about it a tiny bit more than everybody else, but it's still pretty reactionary.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the nature of it. You are living on pure excitement and dream in the beginning. You are not in the super practical place. You are to an extent, but not fully. But eventually, and I'd say probably, once you really hit product market fit, which I'm going to assume everyone listening has probably hit product market fit. And so once you hit that product market fit, the focus really needs to change. If you want to be growing the business and then you eventually want to be scaling the business, your operations are going to make or break you. And if you've only been running in a reactionary way, or if you're only doing what you've always done, you're going to put a ceiling on how far you can go, or you're going to grow beyond your ability to deliver, and your customer service is going to suffer in a really negative way, and it's going to damage the brand. And I don't know about you, unfortunately, I see that a lot. I kind of tend to get called in sometimes when that's happened, when people have their oh blank moment because they just went through a period of rapid growth, or maybe they've decided to kind of reimagine some things and they realize, I don't know how to run this. I don't have the team for this. I don't have the systems for this. I'm in a place where all of a sudden the things that used to work aren't working. I'm now getting complaints. I've got people who are unhappy. And it's like they've hit that complexity wall because they didn't take the time to properly architect their operations or to understand what they needed at that next level. Do you find that as well?
I do. What I find is it ends up showing up, in a lot of different ways, depending on, who the client is and what their true personal definition of success is, which is one of the things that I start with is let's get really back to what your real definition of success is, not society's definition and not social media's definition, because a lot of times they've achieved those things and it's still not feeling successful to them.
Mhm.
And so that becomes the first thing. It's like, well, but I, hit $1 million, or whatever the it doesn't matter what the goalpost is, whatever they said is the goal. It's like I've done it, and it's still not the thing. And so first figuring out what is that true definition, but along with that, getting really clear on, where really is the problem, because sometimes it feels like it's in one space, but in fact it's over here in this other space that all of these things are connected. And I think that's one of the things I focus on. I think it's one of the things you focus on as well, Krista, is looking at operations as a whole strategic machine instead of the individual elements that people associate with operations. Because sometimes it's like, well, we need to fix finance. It's like, yeah, I don't think finance is actually the problem. Maybe it's, customer service, or, maybe it's you've actually got a personnel issue. And it seems like it may be, in this one area, but looking at it in that much more holistic environment I think is one of the places that make both you and I relatively unique in the operations world, is that we aren't silo focused and we aren't seeing it through a particular lens. We're looking at it through a whole strategic operational lens instead of, you know, a vertical lens. I think you call it the T's versus the E's, right?
Yep, and for any of you who've been paying attention and you know I have the new division of Lean Out Method coming, it's called Strategic Ops Institute, very intentionally, because it is very much a strategic focus. And I think that the reality is you're going to hit a point in your business where you cannot have somebody who's not a strategically minded operational person on your team. Like, that person has to be a strategy and ops person. And unfortunately, a lot of operational leaders are really exceptional at the thing that they are very skilled at, but they've never had the opportunity to really exercise their strategic thinking abilities because they've been stuck in a little bit more of an ops box, which people can get stuck into in operational roles. Some of them don't even realize just how incredible and strategic they can be, but very few approach operations in that holistic strategic way. And Gwen, that is one of the reasons why I love our conversations so much.
Me too. That's exactly it, because I see the same thing. A lot of folks are like, oh, I've got a really good, ops person, whether it's a director of ops or, sometimes they'll be describing them as a fractional COO, and all sorts of titles out there, and everybody has a different definition of what that title is. But when you start listening to it, it's like, no, that's really tactical. And that's an important element. Not saying it's not a valuable element. It really is a valuable element. But very few people, as you said, who are really good at ops, part of the reason they're good at ops is they're really good at the tactics and the details. But that means a lot of times they haven't had that opportunity to look in a more holistic, strategic way.
Yeah, and it's like it's local optimization versus global optimization is what we call it in big business, right? And so it's like, are you looking at solving the problem? It's like you go to the doctor, are they prescribing you medicine to treat the symptom or are they actually getting to the root cause of
Right.
what is causing the illness so that you can take care of it? And you need that very holistic, very systems thinking approach to things, that looking at the business as an ecosystem, as a puzzle where you're looking at all the different pieces that fit together and how one piece impacts another piece. If you don't have that view, all you're doing is putting Tylenol on top of a problem instead of actually
Yep.
eliminating and solving the problem.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that when you and I talk about it, it kind of sounds like that shouldn't be that hard, but often that root cause is so nowhere near the, presenting symptom is,
Right.
right? And that's one of the things that also is why, strategic thinking, but also experience thinking, of having seen enough different things. I mean, that's the other thing that you and I both talk about and bring to the table, is we've seen so many different variations of businesses and industries and experiences and whatnot. We can say, yeah, 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 I know this seems like a such and such, but I'm pretty sure it's over here in this other completely different area. Someone like you or I go in and we start doing just the tiniest bit of digging. It's like, oh, yep, there it is. Poof.
Yep.
And it's a very different way of thinking, as opposed to just looking at, what is the action, what is the thing, what is the reaction to whatever is going on in the business.
It's true. And I get a lot of those calls. I'm sure you get them too. It's like, I've talked to three different people and they all told me it's this, but this isn't working. And I'll have a conversation with him and I'm like, "Yeah, that's because that's not the problem. Like, you're 3 steps away from having to do that thing. Your problem's back here. Like, you need to solve this." And then they make that change and all of a sudden things fall right into place. And it's not that those other people were wrong necessarily. It's that because they weren't taking that very holistic view, they
Yep.
were solving the immediate thing that they saw, and they didn't get that that wasn't actually going to give the change that was needed because there were deeper issues. And I see that really, really commonly. I get those like, I feel like it's remember like House, remember the show House,
Yes.
where people would go to him because nobody else could solve the issue. I feel like we're the houses of business where people come to us because they're like, everyone told us to do this and we did it and it didn't work. And it's like, because they're solving the wrong problem.
Right, because it's I mean, it is a problem, but it just keeps, regenerating. It's like, yes, you fixed it. And the problem that's actually causing the problem has made it become a problem again, and then you fix it. And the problem that was causing the problem makes it come back again, and then you fix it. It's like, yeah, no, that it is the what do they call it, the definition of insanity,
Mhm.
doing the same thing over and over again expecting a different result. It's like, nope, not not gonna get there. Um, and, and it is the thing that's always interesting, because sometimes the root cause, is in a very direct line, and as you start digging down, it's like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. But sometimes, because I think of operations as gears, and that they're all intertwined. That sometimes it's this gear that's way off over, completely kind of out of sight. And it's like, I don't see how that would fix. But as you start to follow that chain of events, that line, it's like, oh, now I see how this thing way over here is affecting this other thing that seems completely unrelated. But in fact, they are connected and they are attached.
Well, it's interesting too because, right, I bridge and I play operational roles and marketing roles because I am that weird dual person.
You are the unicorn, my friend.
But what's really interesting to me is so often and very commonly, I find that most visionaries think that what they have is a marketing problem. And what they frequently have is actually an operational problem. Again, it's like they're solving the wrong problem. Yes, you need more leads. Sure, if you want to hit $18 billion, you need more leads if you're at 500,000 today. Yes, no doubt. Of course you do, right? But because as visionaries, and I am very much a visionary, so I get this too. I'm that weird, like I said, half visionary, half operational minded person. Like we have these big dreams, and the way that we go about getting them is, well, we got to get this thing out, and we got to tell people, and we got to tell more people, and we've got to say it in just the right way. And they end up very focused on the marketing piece of it, but the problem is that behind the scenes they can't actually take on any more clients. They don't have the system to support the level of growth that they're trying to get to. Sometimes they don't even have the system to support where they're currently at. And so they're trying to fix the wrong problem. And if they were to fix their operational engine that's running in the back end, a lot of times they will actually see higher revenues, higher profits, higher all the things, because there's time and money that's leaking in the business without those things being optimized for sure. But a lot of times you're not retaining clients maybe because they're not having a really great experience, or you don't have a good system to even ask them to retain. You're not getting the referrals that you could be getting. Again, maybe you don't have a good system to be asking for
Right.
those referrals. And so there's not just money and time that's being wasted in the business, but there is huge opportunity with current and prior clients and current and prior leads that sometimes people just kind of forget about, like they didn't buy now, so they're forgotten and they're off to the next thing. And more often than not, it's actually an operational problem instead of a marketing problem, but most visionaries gravitate towards marketing. Do you
Well,
see
and
that as well?
oh, absolutely. And it makes sense, because marketing got them to what I always call the first level of success. Whatever that first is, where things start to get wonky, right? They start to fall apart in some way, or the growth curve flattens out, or they're starting to feel overwhelmed. I mean, there's a thousand ways that it'll show up. But that up to that point, the sales and marketing is what got them there. And so they feel like, well, to get past this next, I'm going to call it the hiccup, whether it's, the bump, the hiccup, the roadblock, whatever. They feel like, okay, what got me here should get me to that next thing. And it is exactly as you said. So many times, once you shore up, what I always call it the back end. I say everything that's not client facing in my world is operations, right? So once you start shoring up all of those operational things that are not client facing, all of a sudden the client facing things, the product, the marketing, the sales, often immediately, right themselves or fix themselves. And, and it's unfortunate because I do see people investing again and again and again in the newest marketing, idea, scheme, whatever, whatever it happens to be. And it's like, it's not doing it. It's not doing it. It's like, yeah, because you're trying to fix something that's not in fact broken. That part is doing what it's supposed to do. We need to make it do it better, but that's a that's at this other place that it back to, because it was built reactionarily. Is that a word? We just made it a word. Because it was built that way, we don't think about that there may be other ways to build it, and other ways to make it work, which would make more sense at wherever they are at their current stage of business, right? I mean, that becomes the thing that you did initially as a reaction probably was appropriate for that size, but you maybe had to decide that that's just no longer appropriate, right? One of my favorite phrases I use from time to time is, nine women can't make a baby in a month. You can't necessarily throw more people at that particular problem and fix it. And I think, often that's where people get to at that growth stage. Is like, I just need more people. It's like, no, I'm not sure that you can. I'm not sure that you can get enough people to fix it, or put enough resources of whatever resources are at it. We need to rethink, how we're doing it.
Absolutely. And so, kind of to keep pulling this thread a little bit, I think the reality is, right, as the founder of a business, especially if you tend to be more of a visionary, you are really good at what you're really good at. And most founders, right, are great at ideation. They're great at their craft. They tend to be, really great at setting the vision and holding the vision, which is good. It's part of your role as a founder, right? And so each of those things are your superpowers and what you want to be leaning into and doing more of. And frequently, when you're stuck in the operations or doing too much of it, the reason why you start to bring in your team and you find a right hand person and you start to bring in people like me and Gwen, right? Is because at that point you're realizing I'm not getting to spend enough time in my zone of genius and doing what I do really well. But the challenge with that is when you are the one who is hiring an operational person, and then you are the one who is training that operational person, right? We just talked about what the zone of genius was and the strengths are and the passions are. I bet your passion probably is not operations. And if your passion isn't operations, it's probably also not your zone of genius. You've probably gotten pretty darn good at it to get your business to where it is today, but
Just
you've
out of
gotten good,
necessity.
absolutely, but you've gotten good at what you know how to do, which is what got your business to where it is today and also what will keep your business exactly where it is today. And so you do want to look for someone who is an expert. Or if you've brought somebody in and you've trained them, well, you trained them how to do what you know how to do. So they're doing what you would have done, which again is going to keep your business where it is today. And so you either want to up level your existing team, send them to Strategic Ops Institute, where I'm now training and certifying right hand people because of that gap that I see in the market. And a lot of people not really understanding how to truly scale and think strategically. So that's the gap that I'm closing with that business. But up level your existing team, or if you're going to hire somebody, don't try to just hire somebody at a lower level, or don't try to hire somebody that you're going to train. When you invest in a really good ops person, you will get that back like 100 times over. When you invest in somebody who is not as strategic or not as skilled, it's gonna end up feeling like either an expense or like a drain on you, because you're gonna have to be teaching them a lot of things and it's not your passion, it's not your superpower.
Yeah.
And if they're just doing what you would have done, neither one of you are gonna be able to take the business where you need to, because as we said, it's probably not a problem in what you're so good at. The problem is probably in operations.
Well, and and when you're saying that, I there's so many times that I've seen folks trying to hire a virtual assistant as a strategic thinker.
Mhm.
And, those are completely different roles. Not that you don't necessarily need a virtual assistant, you might, but you need to make sure that you're hiring them at the right time to do the right kinds of roles. And really being able to think about um, what do I need and when, and do you need, and by the same token, I see people often try to hire a fractional COO way before they need someone at that level for that period of time also. Right? I mean, because it can go both directions, and it's like, well, they're
Mhm.
really expensive and it's a whole lot of, and it's like, yeah, you're actually not quite there yet either, so finding that right mix of how much of this do you need, when do you need it, how do you need it, it's a tough piece. And it is also what you said, how much of this do you really like, how much of it do you really enjoy, how much of it is your passion. And there's some that actually are more like you, that have a little more interest in the operations, even though they're very much visionaries. And there's some that it just there's absolutely none. And so often, you talked about hiring. I've seen that happen so many times, that the first person or two they hire is really almost another person like them. And then they're wondering why it's not getting done well. And it's like, well, because you hired someone like you, and you actually need someone not like you to do this thing.
Oh, it's so true. I just led a workshop, building your lean dream team and finding the right-hand person. And I talked about the characteristics of a right-hand person and what they are and what they're not. And the very first thing I listed of what they're not is they are not like you and they are not you. And so you don't want to find your
Exactly.
clone. We joke that we wish we could clone ourselves, and that's not actually true. You don't want to clone yourself. What you want when you say, I want to clone myself, it usually means I want somebody to take all the things I don't want to do off of my plate. Or I wish there was someone who could do what I do as well as I do it, so I didn't have to be the only one doing it. And neither of those things are your right hand person. Neither of those things are gonna be the person that you're probably trying to hire for. And the more similar that person is to you, you're just gonna amplify the gaps in the business
Yep.
instead of filling and closing the gaps in the business.
Yep. Absolutely. And one of the things that I'm finding more and more is the first couple times people try to hire those kinds of roles, whether it's, at a truly strategic level, or even at more of a mid level, like an OBM kind of role or whatnot, that they often don't get it right the first time or two. And that's okay, because it takes a little bit to figure some of these things out sometimes. Don't beat yourself up that, I hired someone and it wasn't the right person. Happens to all of us. I'm pretty sure you've probably hired someone that wasn't the right person, and I know I've hired the
Oh,
person
yeah.
person that wasn't the right person. So don't beat
Mhm.
yourself up over it, but be prepared that you really do have to be thinking about this person very, very differently than you think about you, and the things that necessarily that you like. The best scenarios I see is there's some overlap of similarity, but there's a lot of overlap that is not, that
Mhm.
that that you got to have a little bit of similarity in there. It just feels like conflict all the time, but there has to be this view that is a different view, because that's really what you're looking for, is someone to say, really, do we think that's really what we want to do? Is this really the way we want to do it? And to challenge you, because that's where the strength comes in from it.
Absolutely. Okay, so you and I could literally talk just for days and days and days on end. However, I would love for you to share with all of the listeners about what you do, where they can find you. Tell us what's going on in your world and how you work with your clients.
So, and I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. I love working with my clients that are in that late 6, early 7. I work with females primarily, but in that late 6, early 7 space where you really can't justify a true fractional COO yet, but you need a little bit more than an OBM. And you're in that space. And so I work with my clients primarily one to one in that space, and we meet once a week just for an hour, just to kind of stay on top of things. And it's a great way to be in that transition space, and to be able to decide when is the right time to bring in someone in more of a true fractional, COO sort of role, because that will happen, if we work together and the business grows and scales, because that's what you really want. Back to, we need to make sure your definition of success is where we're headed. But that's how I'd like to work with folks, and in doing so, we have lots of conversations. We also do quarterly planning, and there's all sorts of other fun things that go along with it. And if anyone is interested, they can always book a call on my website, which is everydayeffectiveness.com. And I will have a conversation with anybody. I love to have a conversation. And, it's not always a great fit, but I can almost always give you some sort of an insight in the process of having a conversation. Because, I have the superpower similar to what Krista's is, of being able to figure out, oh, you think it's here, but it's over here. We need to look over here. And often that's enough to get someone, into a better space, when they're like, oh, I keep trying to fix this thing, but that's not the thing. It's over here. So I really like being able to do that one-on-one work, because it allows me to feel a part of the business with still being outside of the business, and really watching the impact and watching the transformation happen with both the owner and the business over time. It's very satisfying. I know you know what I'm talking about, because I know you have
Mhm.
the exact same experience.
I do, but you said something that's so, I think so important there is the longevity of being a part of a business and working one-on-one with the business, but the ability to balance that with the objectivity of not only knowing that business and not only bringing in 30 plus years of experience into it, but also working with diverse clients. So you're seeing things across the board. So that one business that you're partnering with and working with is getting the benefit of all of the businesses that you're working with and partnering with. And so I think it's such a great type of thing to consider for those of you listening. If you're not yet at the place where you have a full-time internal person, you want someone like Gwen or I to work with you, right? And right now, I'm not taking one-on-one clients, so you want Gwen to work with you.
I consider that the highest compliment, Krista, when you recommend me. Thank you.
But seriously, it really does set you up for success in so many ways without having that full-time person, and just knowing with confidence that you have somebody who's there for the long haul, who's got your business and your success in mind, and also the objectivity to really know if the things that you're doing are going to work in a broader context. So, all right, with that, I have to ask you the one question I ask everybody, and I am like dying to hear what you have to say for this. But how in your business do you work smarter, not harder, and keep things lean?
So I'm going to give you a little bit of a roundabout answer, but it's really about, I have focused on keeping a very tiny team, because every person you add to the team, regardless of the number of hours they work, adds exponential complexity in communication. And so I focus on keeping my team tiny, but also focused on what they're working on. And part of what we do in the work smarter, not harder, is we use the tools that we use with our clients, which seems really obvious, but it's surprising the number of coaches, consultants, whatever, that if you really talk to them, they don't actually leverage the tools that they're telling their people to use. And one of our tools is what we call the weekly course of action, which is an asynchronous accountability tool that only takes a few minutes every week to update. I mean, really, I usually spend 5-10 minutes at the most updating my own. And we each have our own weekly course of action tool that we use. And then we look at each other's, which allows us to know where everyone is, what they got done that week, and what they're looking at doing the following week, which saves a ton of time in meetings and communication, but we're able to stay really on top of it. So because it's a tiny team, I don't have, dozens of those to look at. I have a few of those to look at, which takes another 10, maybe 15 minutes on Monday to review what their update was that they did on Friday. But in probably 25 minutes, we probably save an hour to an hour and a half meeting probably every week. But we really feel like we're very much in touch with one another. So it's kind of a two combo thing of that's the physical thing I do, but that's part of staying lean is actually focusing on keeping a tiny team for as long as reasonably possible. I'm not afraid to add people when I need to, but also not just adding people because I can.
Brilliant. I love it. Well, Gwen, thank you so much for being here today. I hope all of you loved this conversation as much as I did, and I'll definitely have Gwen back on the show and we'll do the Kristen and Gwen show again. So if you want to hear us rant about any particular topics, just send me an email at info.
Absolutely.
Send me an email at info@leanoutmethod.com and we will add that to our agenda for next time. But Gwen, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I loved the conversation, no surprise, and would welcome being back for any question anyone has, because we love to talk about this stuff.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If you have not yet taken our scalability assessment, I invite you to head to leanoutmethod.com/assessment and take our interactive assessment that's going to help you look at how simple, how sustainable, and how scalable your business currently is. It includes personalized recommendations of where to focus next to get your time back, to increase your impact, increase your profits, and ultimately step into your rich, fulfilled life. And finally, we'd love to see you inside our signature program, Simplify to Scale. You can head to leanoutmethod.com/ops to find all of the details on how we can help you uplevel your operations and get out of the day-to-day of your business.